Alright, in this video we're going to be talking about the distributive property, and later on we're also going to talk about factoring. So the distributive property is used when you have something like question number 2 here, where inside the parentheses you have a variable, so you can't just add the stuff in the parentheses to multiply. So the distributive property, the rule is basically you take the number on the outside that you're multiplying by the parentheses, and you multiply it by the first thing in the parentheses, and then by the second thing in the parentheses. So this would look something like a times b plus a times c. So let's take a look at number 2 and see what we get. So we're just going to take the 6, I'm going to multiply it by the x. That'll give us 6x plus 6 times 3. That'll give us 18. Pretty easy so far. So now let's say we're multiplying by a negative number. So all it's going to do is, in addition to being multiplied by these numbers, it's also going to change the sign. So negative 5 times x would give us a negative 5x. Negative 5 times positive 4 gives us a negative 20. So now moving on. Same thing, when we're multiplying by a negative and we have a negative number, it's going to become positive. So now we have negative 3 times positive x, that gives us negative 3x. But now we have negative 3 times negative 4, which is going to be a positive 12. Number 5, if there's a coefficient in front of x, we're just going to multiply by that coefficient. The coefficient here is just 4. So if we're multiplying 2 by 4x, we're going to get 8x plus 2 multiplied by this 7 here will give us 14. If there's 3 numbers in the parentheses, the same rules basically apply here. You just do 5 times this x squared here. That gives you the 5x squared. 5 times this 2x, that would give us 10x. And 5 times 3, that would give us 15. Now if you're multiplying by the variable that's already inside of the parentheses, x times 2x would give us 2x squared, because x times x is x squared, plus 3 times x, that's just 3x. All right. So now moving on to a bit more of a trickier example. 3x times x squared. X squared times x gives us x cubed. And we also have that 3 in front, so we'll have 3x cubed. Plus 3 times 7 is 21. X times x is x squared. Plus 3x times 3, that's just 9x. So nothing too bad here. You just have to follow the rule. And that's about it. Now moving on to factoring. Factoring is basically just the reverse of what we were just doing. So here we have a common factor between AB and AC. The common factor here is A. So what we can do is we can pull it out, set up some parentheses, and just leave the stuff that we had left behind in the parentheses. So we left behind B, and we left behind C. So let's take a look at another example. The greatest common factor that these two have is 3. So we can pull out 3. And what we'll have left inside would be x, and then 6 divided by 3 leaves us with a 2. And because this is a plus, we're leaving this as a plus. So now we have negative numbers, but same idea. The greatest common factor here is negative 7. So if we pull out a negative 7, inside the parentheses, that leaves a positive x. And now, because we pulled out a negative, that gives us a positive 3. So now we have x squared and x. So our greatest common factor here would actually be x. So we can pull out this x. That leaves behind, x times x gives you x squared. So that leaves behind just 1x plus 2, because we pulled out one of those x's. So here we have more than just a single common factor. Both of these have 3, as well as an x. So we can pull out 3x. That'll leave behind an x and a positive 3. So now when x is at a greater power, like 5, 4, and 3, we can pull out the smallest one. So the smallest one is going to be x to the power of 3, because all of these have x to the power of 3 in them, but we can't pull out like an x to the power of 5 because x to the power of 3 is smaller than that. So if we were to pull out this x to the power of 3, what that would leave behind is all you do is you subtract from the number here, the number here. So if we pull out x to the power of 3 from x to the power of 5, 5 minus 3 is just 2. So that leaves an x squared plus x to the power of 4, 4 minus 3, just x. Then x to the power of 3 divided by x to the power of 3 is just going to be 1. So now again, these have more than one common factor. So they all have an x squared in them, at least one time, and they all have a 3. So we can pull out a 3x squared, and that would leave behind x to the power of 2 plus 3x plus, and now we got completely rid of this x squared because we pulled out an x squared, so it would leave behind just 7. Hopefully that makes sense where I'm getting these numbers, but all we're doing here is we're just dividing 21x squared by 3x squared. 9x squared, or 9x to the power of 3 by 3x squared. That's where the numbers are coming from, in case that didn't make sense. So now in this example, the biggest we can pull out here is going to be just an x. We can't do anything with the 2 and the 4 because there's nothing in front of this x here. So all we can do is pull out an x, and that leaves behind a 2x squared, and just x on its own is the same thing as x to the power of 1. So, and then here, what that's going to leave behind is going to be a 4x, and then x divided by x is just 1. So that's it for number 8. That's basically it for factoring and the distributive property. Thank you guys for watching. If you're looking for practice problems, there should be some linked in the description below. If you like the video, please leave a like. It's much appreciated. Really helps get the content out there for other people to see. And yeah, have a great day.